All right, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to our panel, which is called Live Service Games, Challenges and Benefits, but we agreed to call it Dark Patterns, the sequel, basically. And if you've been on part one, then you know what we're talking about. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panelists and myself. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Miko, and I'm a game developer. But I would like to say that we have a very wide variety of people who have come, who are all extremely experienced and have done some really awesome things. So I will go, I think it's by alphabetical order, or just list order. So I'd like to introduce you to Atanasow, a very experienced in-house counsel and working with gaming and fashion, supporting startups as well as public entities, ex-head of legal counsel at Huge Games and general counsel of CCC. Mariusz Gąsiewski from Google, Wosiura from Artifex Mundi, and Małgorzata from Rage Quit Games. I'd like to let everybody now speak a few words about themselves, maybe from left to right, clockwise.
Hello, so my name is Małgorzata and I'm a legal counsel at Rage Quit Games, so an in-house lawyer here. And we are a Kraków-based developer studio developing actually only mobile games. And I'm a generalist, but also focusing mostly on data protection regulations and intellectual property law.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm working with different small studios nowadays and more like a freelancer. My expertise is more like general, like Małgosia's, but what I really like the most is commercial and contracts. And I pass the mic to Mariusz, who is not a lawyer.
Hello, my name is Mariusz. I work for Google, where I work as the kind of internal consulting team for top clients from the gaming. And then in the recent months from real money gambling and sports betting industry, because that's some kind of interesting topic as well. At Google, I work mostly with advertising, which especially in the last months are quite heavily connected towards privacy and the different privacy-related regulations and some limitations related to that as well.
I'm Jan. I'm a typical lawyer without any sense of humor. I like making problems. I'm a general counsel for Artifex Mundi. We make mobile games.
Done.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the introduction. So we'd like to spice things up a bit. We'll do a very quick session of questions. So let's start off with a question. Who's a lawyer? Raise your hand really quick. Okay, that's quite a lot of lawyers. Who's not a lawyer and a game developer or made games? Okay, that's very, very few.
Who is user acquisition or anything?
Or user acquisition? Okay, nobody. Good. Who worked on Live Ops games? And who knows what a Live Ops games is? Okay, that's quite good, but it means that like 90% of people do not know the definition of what a live ops games is, and actually we don't know either, because we basically spoke with 20 developers who work on live ops games in the last half an hour while having lunch, and everybody said a different definition. I think the smartest definition was anything that's connected to the internet. So let's say if you have Cyberpunk, by definition, if you buy it on Steam, it's a live ops game, and then if they sell a DLC, it's also a live ops game, but it's a very low tier of live ops-ness, if you could say so. Whereas you can have more detailed definitions, and I'd like to start with asking each of our panelists to have a comment what the live ops games is. So maybe let's start with Mariusz.
For me, live ops game is the game that has has related to frequent adding of the content that makes the experience of the users richer and broader over the time. So for me, it's frequency and scale of the content is added to the gaming experience creates the live ops game.
For me, it's type of game that can generate huge revenues, but it's hard to maintain for a long time.
So I would focus mostly on the revenue model, and I would say that it's something that has some games that have some sort of continuity in the revenue model. But I wouldn't focus on definitions too much, to be honest, because we don't have a legal definition of a live service game. And I'm not sure if we really need that, to be honest. We as lawyers like discuss definitions, but it won't help us in this specific situation. And I would say that maybe it's not even about identifying whether a game is or is not live service, but whether it has some live service elements, and it can help you with compliance issues, for example.
Is this one working too? Yeah, it does. So I would define live service games as something opposite to the premium model, because this is how we discuss it. Someone is switching to live service, or someone is doing not premium, they're doing live service. So I would say this is something that has enough purchases in it, consistent enough, as Gosia said, to be able to say it's this is a service and it is happening. If we say that it's everything connected to the internet, or everything that has a DLC, then Baldur's Gate 1 or 2 can be considered a live service. I wouldn't say that's the point. With regard to Cyberpunk, it's the same. It's one edition. You are not going to monetize it as I would say live service is a way you monetize games. Not necessarily think of it as let's say, a content component.
Yeah. So if I can also add one more thing that kind of came to my mind, like also an easy way to define a live service is if you have a live team that is needed to maintain a product over a specific or not specific period of time. It can be a live service game for 6 months, or it could be World of Warcraft that's going to be around for the next 50 years probably, and it will be alive. So unless anyone wants to add something to that, I guess we can go to the first part, which is going to be challenges. Unless, Mariusz?
No, but I think it's like if we look at the live model, I think it's extension of the general entertainment model that exists today. Yes, so what we see just even is the movies and different sequels. In general entertainment and especially mobile gaming as the extreme part of it is high risk, high reward business by definition, which means that the business is risky. So finally, as the company, you are trying to decrease the risk, where finally, usually optimization of the existing properties and existing game is very often seen as less risky, and usually it is, than pushing the new content. Yes, that's finally extension of the life of the game, and making that in the way that people are not bored and they feel it as the continuous growth of their experience is just the outcome of it. And I think even if we see as the extension of the free-to-play model, I think I was just doing the analysis how many even Steam games are adding some free-to-play and the kind of live of ops related techniques, yeah? For the same exact reason, yeah? So how to really extend the life of the product, extend the life of the game, yeah?
That is very true. Got nothing else to add to that. Very good, I'd say, definition of that. So I would like to start with a question for Małgosia regarding, well, one of the challenges and problems when you're operating a game in multiple countries, and it's, well, data protection. So if you could talk about that, what are the challenges regarding actually operating games if you have hundreds of millions of players like you guys do, and your game is accessed from all around the world, from United States, where in the United States you have California, which has specific laws and regulations regarding consumers that are different from Alabama and from Poland and then Germany, and then you have countries that all have to, act according to hundreds of regulations. So if you could share some of your insights regarding this.
Yeah, so of course, personal data protection is a big topic in our industry, and I think that especially in live service gaming. And of course, the GDPR has been with us for quite a while, and I think that still some of the companies are not so familiar with it, and we have still more and more regulations coming up. We've talked during another panel that there is an idea in US right now to make a federal law, which would be actually quite a good idea, because right now we have, as far as I know, around 17 different regulations in the US itself. So it's like crazy to navigate through all of this when you are a studio with, when you're a small studio and maybe you cannot even afford a lawyer or a law firm for yourself. So I would say that from the practical perspective and from the GDPR approach, you should focus on some basics, of course, and those basics are data safety. So, of course, avoiding any leaks. And the second area I would say that would be data subject requests, because statistically, judging from the fines that are given to the companies, I think that those are two areas that are most commonly find as the worst ones, yeah? And I would say that as long as you keep your data safe, and as long as your players' complaints are more or less solved or fulfilled, I would say that those are the areas that you should focus in the first place if you have a limited budget, limited resources, etc.
If I can add a little bit on that, I mean, a lot of you are not lawyers, so that may be viable. A lot of developers are receiving data privacy requests without even realizing they're receiving them. Under GDPR, you must modify, for example, personal data of people. So when you are being when you get a request from a player to support, hey, I would like to change my nickname, this is a GDPR request. You have 30 days to comply, and you risk a huge fine if you don't do so. And a lot of small studios are missing this because they just don't realize laws can apply to such trivial things.
Yeah, if I could comment on that, I would say that we, as lawyers in general, but also probably game developers, I think that we kind of underestimate the role of support teams and customer services teams and community managers as well in the role of privacy compliance in general. Because you can have great documentations, great politics, and everything seems to be fine. But if those procedures are impossible to implement within your team, within your organizations, they just simply won't work. And if a support team member is not really even aware that something can be a GDPR or, in general, data privacy related request, it can be a problem.
But I think that if we add to that, it's like if we connect that topic, even this data, towards like live ops as the idea, like I think there is pretty strong connection in the way that we can think of data in the like 2024 plus as the kind of currency. Yeah? So like something like if the user gives us like the permission to share the data, it's kind of, that's the currency. Of course, we can like think how to make sure that he can trust us, how actually really build first-party strategy in the way that we are gathering the data, and we can use that in the safe way. But on the other side, like even live ops and like these live services as the way to have longer relationship with the user, as the way to we have longer kind of that user he has his longer time with us. Then we have actually more ability even to grow that relationship and actually finally make him really feel safe and finally share us with us with more data in safe ways. So I think it's like, of course, we could think about different extreme cases and what could happen to developers, or like what can happen to some users who like sue us about this or another. But I think in general, like that's from the data perspective, LiveOps exactly is giving us the way to grow relationship with the user for longer time, which means finally we have more ability to get the trust and finally get more data in the way that user feels still safe. Yeah.
Just one thing to add, because our perspective is like hear you guys is more like corporations and, you know, established companies and gaming studios. But I work with a very small studios, like 5 people, 4 people. They have no idea about the GDPR. Not that they don't care. They don't have resources, right? And they can't afford to hire lawyers like probably majority of us here. So what they actually do, they kind of rely on a publisher. That publisher will help them understand the risks, struggles, challenges, and kind of support them. So this is one just point for me.
But I think it's happening already. Yeah? So like no, I think like many people are complaining that okay, there are so many kind of new changes or like some new enforcements coming from Google Play as the example. Yeah, but that's actually that's exactly some kind of way to keep up with some like changes in the legislation perspective and kind of sometimes even enforce on some like developers some changes that are not just coming from idea of like Apple or Google, but just coming from specific new changes coming to the regulations. So I think it's like it's not easy to catch up on the daily basis, especially for smaller companies. But I think on the other hand, there is like I think more and more resources that are sometimes coming from regulations, sometimes coming from services where you can, for example, like connect via API to specific service, and then it's like bringing you a lot of additional compatibility with some law enforcement as well. Yes, for example, like very recent COMO changes like this kind of that was enforced on the Google side. So like you can do it by yourself, but there are like a lot of kind of trusted parties that can actually take it on your behalf. Of course, it's some additional effort, but that's not really just the idea of the platform, just coming from bigger influence from the regulations.
So if I can, unless you want to go, Jan? Okay. So I want to brush up more on this topic and actually get more information from all of you. So let's grill this topic more. But all of us here, as you said, we can afford lawyers, and our teams are, from relatively small to relatively big. For example, Vavel, when we acquired Imperial Galactic War from Kabam, we actually had the terms of service in the documents they've sent us. So we had like a 50-page long document that covered California, everything you want to operate an MMO. We obviously had to make a lot of modifications for it because it was pre-GDPR, so those clauses had to be explained, and we have access to, great lawyers, Rymarz Maruta and Nav Sanner, and a few other people who helped us navigate this messy thing, and, we are fairly experienced, and the same goes for every single person probably in this room. But my question is, what could we do as an industry, as like us in the community, to make it actually easier for developers to understand how to actually have those terms of service? Like, for example, when you create an account on the Windows Store, you have a questionnaire, and maybe like have a kind of questionnaire through a great company like Google, Microsoft, where you fill those things out and it generates like those kinds of baseline terms of service, something like that. What do you guys think about this?
I think we should definitely, if possible, discuss with platforms some kind of unification of the rules. Because, as a developer now, when you're starting a live service game, you have one set of rules for Google, one set of rules for Apple, one set of rules for Steam, and so on and so on. So any efforts toward making this, I'm not saying it has to be the same, but any effort that would go towards making them more similar, or let's see, at least some of, I don't know, the amount of data being processed, or the way you identify the users. If you can make this more similar, then there is going to be much less overhead on the developer's side to actually prepare for privacy features and then throw out your game.
Is there anything like that already active, like some website that you can actually do for this? Because I don't know, we already had those things done, so I never needed it, but I was wondering if that could be something useful for others.
I think you have some third party. I think even Google has the content management platform now, which provides at least some of these technologies. You can use the Google CMP on Apple, and it works. So you can define it this way, and you can progress that route to eventually end up with one plugin or one API that is going to handle your privacy. That would be the way to go, in my view.
Awesome. So, Anya, do you have something to add to this?
Well, actually, not on this topic. I mean, what I wanted to was thinking aloud, Mikołaj, because it's a very good question. What we can do is, except for doing those events like we do now, which has huge education value, so maybe we should think about some, summary that is useful for the developers sitting in another building. More like connecting more and discussing what do they need, because my point of view comes from either small or big companies, and they are like, all of them, they are like, yeah, I think they will appreciate unification kind of thing. On the other hand, what we were like, we had one of the biggest challenges at Huge Games last year. It was, and Michał Pękała, thank you, because your team helps us a lot in challenges regarding, this omnibus implementation, right? So there is like maybe some good practices or kind of manual or checklist that we can provide even, for free to the industry with, maybe that could be helpful, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome. If you would have some kind of a list that would say that this and these practices are going to cause you to fail your certification at the platform, or these and these practices are more or less okay. This would help plenty, right? So the challenge would be, though, we would need to discuss with the regulators first to make this omnibus make sense. So I mean, you can't expect, it would be awesome, but you can't really, I think, expect the platform to interpret these rules for you, because they can't be expected to take the responsibility here. So we would need to discuss with the EU regulators, for example, to come up with interpretation for omnibus, and then hopefully we could try to work with platforms to create some kind of clean set of rules.
I agree exactly in the way that it's kind of tricky. Like, even just recently, it's not really part of the live service as the topic, but we just recently there was like big topic with with this constant management. Yeah. So and we are like working on that with some like top clients, and then like even some simple thing like, okay, someone was asking for can you bring me some good examples of that implementation? Yeah, but even that was not easy to send, because that could be seen as the kind of legal advice, because okay, you are showing, okay, that works, and if for some reason doesn't work and someone is sued, then you have the obligation and kind of responsibility for that. Yeah. So again, I think having set kind of universal rules for the companies that are operating the global world, when there are so many differences between different countries, and what is their approach towards the understanding of the data, not even live service, but understanding of the data, privacy, and so on. So it's kind of hard to expect that there will be a bit more than some set of kind of I would not say maybe basic, but by kind of general foundation for those rules that are kind of more universal across many countries, versus okay, to make it working, that button should have like 4 centimeters, and then it should have not less than 1, and so on and so on. Yeah, because it's kind of very not realistic to think about how many things you would need to have it on as universal. Yeah.
I just had a thought that it would be interesting if there was like a large language model that was fine-tuned with all those questions that developers could just ask, and have like a simple FAQ, for example, maybe hosted by Google, and it's like, hey, I have this problem, will I be compliant? Definitely not, no, don't do that. Right? Something like this. So, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I can't wait until this language model is going to start to hallucinate privacy rules.
It will be more fun. So that said, let's go to the next similar topic, but related.
But actually, if you are saying about that, there is like one very interesting platform that was published not very long by Google, called Checks, which exactly is kind of has similar reason. Yeah. So how to actually not replace the kind of legal service, but kind of how to speed up some working on some legal topics for app and gaming developers. Yes, how to actually speed up, because I think we are agreeing even before during the discussion that AI for sure, like for example, will not replace the law and will not replace the lawyers, but can really speed up working with some kind of most universal, most applicable topics that are okay. There is a general agreement, at least for those 80% of use cases, and then the rest 20% is really the work for very strong professionals who can really specialize in that.
Awesome. Anyone? Checks. Okay, so yeah, that's really interesting. And like one of the things that, like you said, the checks allows you to speed through it. It's very problematic. One of the things that we discuss is that how do you actually understand that a new law came up in Sweden or somewhere else? I'm a publisher with Exola, and I do get a weekly or bi-weekly digest that, hey, there is a new tax in Singapore. It's going to be 2.5% instead of 2% now, or something else changes, or fees in China are now down by 5%. And I get this like every week, basically. It's impossible to keep up. I'm just like saying, yes, sure, that works. But how can you do it from a perspective of a small studio or medium-sized studio or even a big studio? Because you have to keep a track of a lot of stuff. Like I think the easiest one would be to see the World of Tanks or World of Warcraft terms of service every month and see if they added anything new. So subscribe, because they'll be the first ones to catch it. That's actually what I did whenever like one of the games that are big that I used to play had an update. I actually wondered if we should update it as well. So I didn't, that was like a proactive approach. But do you have any recommendation, like all of you actually, to game developers who are managing this torrent of information and new updates and regulations and things that can put you in jail basically on a monthly basis, for breaking a law in some shape or form that you never knew was a law?
Yeah, so I wanted to go back to the let's say checking out the competition. You do that, yes. I mean, I myself, I'm taking a look at what the bigger players are doing. What's interesting is these are not always people who have the right implementation in their terms first. Sometimes they are really lagging behind. I also recommend checking out their apps to understand how their privacy features and banners are changing. There is software or tool you can use to see what data is being transferred from the device, so you can also take a look at the app and the, let's say, privacy features versus what is actually being sent. This is going to help you understand what the competition does and what it says. With regards to tracking, I really don't want to say I got nothing, but the truth is that it's. To the best of my knowledge, there is no service that's going to take care of this for you, and it really costs a lot of money to track all of these things. If you're not a lawyer, the best you can do is you can, or even if you're a lawyer, what you can do is you can simply see the newsletters, read this through, and hope you are going to catch as much of it as you can.
Yeah, I personally agree that there is no simple answer to that problem, because that's like one of I think our everyday problems, and there is no single resource or a place that we could recommend that will solve all your legal problems. And unless you have unlimited resources, you probably won't be able to follow all the changes and all the updates in the law. So definitely looking at the competition is one of the ideas you can have. But I would also go back to the things that Mariusz said, that we are discussing, that to a certain point the big platforms became also legislators for us, and their implementation directly influence the way that game developers have to behave. And especially when you're a beginning developer and you have a really small studio, you probably don't care so much that data protection authority will knock to your doors, but you really care that your app might be taken down from the App Store or Google Play. So maybe in the first place, focus on the developer policies and compliance requirements that are included in there. They are based on GDPR and other bills, of course. And I think there are many examples that we can think of, like even the deletion of the accounts. It was introduced, for example, by the GDPR, so for over 6 years. But I'm pretty sure that not every game developer offering accounts was aware of that when a player asks you to delete all their data, you are supposed to do that. But some time ago, both Google and Apple introduced that as an obligation into their policies, that if you offer a game that offers an account, a feature, you have to provide an in-game feature allowing your gamers to delete the account directly from the game after some basic verification, for example. So this is an example how the international regulation come into practice by big platforms implementation. So I would say that would be a first step for the beginning developers and for the smallest studio to focus on.
Two more. One approach that I think it works. It's just once you are compliant with the strictest kind of legal regulations, let's say in Europe, let's say Austria, I don't know, in the US, Alabama state, right? Then you are safe, more or less, you're safe in the others. So this is one approach. The other one is very basic, I would say, business risk. How big is your risk appetite? So to address this at the very beginning of setting up the company or developing it, meaning, when the company is growing, just to agree on some, I don't know, terms, thresholds, whatever can help from the business perspective, also to take decisions later.
Well, maybe to even build on that, yeah. I think very often probably we meet that sentence. It's not the bug, it's the feature. Yeah? And I think it's a little bit the same with gaming, when it's hard probably to find another vertical. It's so global. It's so where you can from any place in the world, like in Krakow, you can compete with companies over the world, reach the users in Philippines, UK, France, Vietnam, whatever you want, and you reach out to you have the reach and access you didn't think about in the past. But that comes with the specific responsibility that actually exactly it's really okay. Do you want to be more global? And then, of course, you need to be kind of more prepared for that. Yeah, that's how this game works. Yeah, so it's global business. In the global business, you need to take into consideration that specific regulations coming in the specific countries and so on, or you more focusing on the specific countries, on the specific territories that you understand, that you know, and I think it's kind of part. It should be really part of the real strategy, yeah? Because again, even if we talk about this risk appetite, yeah, so there are some countries where by definition the privacy regulations are much more strict. The potential outcomes are much harder and so on. In some countries where in general those regulations are not enforced so heavily, at least yet. Yeah? So I think it's exactly part of the what I want to achieve and what resource I want to push to that.
Okay, so I just have another kind of topic and idea, and also a question to the audience to discuss regarding the regulations, actually being able to keep up with everything that is coming up, especially around AI. I myself am building an AI company, and one of the things that we were impacted by is Steam's policy regarding access to AI content inside of Steam-based games. And for a long time, anything with AI was basically banned, to the point where a developer who actually translated his game via Google Translate got banned, which sounded a bit absurd. A few months ago, they actually released a statement where everyone is allowed to do the certain things here, and basically you're not allowed to do real-time porn with faces, and everything else is almost for game. But how can we track that across the board? And maybe, since we have a European Games Federation that consists of 20 member countries basically, and Indie Games Poland and the one in Germany and every major country here, maybe it would be good if we had like a unified channel where all those foundations basically, already have lawyers who support indie game studios, would actually commit to some kind of one, let's call it a blog post, where there's like a critical update, and this is something that's important for everybody. So question, like, do you think that that's something that would be useful from your perspective? If you could raise your hand. If not, then...
You asked them to answer the question, is tracking porn, like...
That was the question, God damn it. No, I meant like if it was an update, if it would be useful. That something changed basically in the policies where you could track it in one place that would be managed by, a central entity like a government basically, where you don't have to do it yourself. Because, we pay taxes so that the roads and, ambulances can get there, and you don't necessarily think about it, but if you have, let's say Google that does a lot of the heavy lifting for a lot of us, maybe that could be approached. What do you think in this case?
I don't know yet, but what I noticed lately, you see how many AI-related regulations are popping up, right?
Yeah.
So China, US, but now Colorado, right? Like 2 days ago. EU, European Union AI Act now is kind of collaboration that it's going to, as I understood, in Vilnius, by the way, 5th of September. I don't know if this will be the term for Game Law Industry Summit in Vilnius, but there is like a momentum when they are going to sign some collaboration AI Act between Europe and I forgot now, I will check and get back to you. So what I'm trying to say is that we don't know, yet, and honestly, we have to be very creative, but I'm also very aware of the fact that whatever we can do now, or I kind of give a legal advice, lawyers, could be like invalid or at some point not true within a month or so. So I don't know. Google?
Have no idea. No, but I think like being serious is I feel like there are like a few cases that are a few points that are important. Yeah, I think that in general, let's see, from the legal perspective, very often are prepared for the worst scenario, yeah? Which, of course, creates the challenge that it makes it not easy to understand, yeah? Because you have a lot of potential use cases, sometimes they're extreme, sometimes they're not, so it's very hard to think about something that is very universal and applicable for every use case and every potential difference between like users in that place or another one, or like how the same even variable is defined by that legislation versus another one. Yeah, so that's one. The second one is just in general. It was always the case that the law and legislation was behind the technology. Yeah? It was not just the last few years, but it was always the case because law and legislation at least tries to create very precise and very more like very well-defined definitions, or like very universal ones as well, which creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of challenges in something that is changing very often and something that is changing very quickly. Yeah? So like AI that you shared is kind of good example. Yeah. So how this AI progressed during the last 2 years. Yeah. So it's like it's hard to imagine how it's really changing, how it's like going quickly. Yeah. So I think. I don't believe, at least at this point, it's realistic to think about something that is universal and applicable for a bigger number of use cases in so fast-changing environment. Yeah? So I think again, it's just a matter of the risk approach, like how okay, what is the foundation, what is good enough, what maybe it's kind of okay. I'm more like, more risk averse or like more risk. Like no, I can take more risks. It's even easy to see what's happening, for example, like in gaming versus in finance, yeah, or like like in those verticals that are way more traditional and way sometimes less dynamic, but sometimes having a little bit more experience. What can come out if you are not doing something in the right way, yeah? Because like you have huge potential. Fine or huge potential outcome as the result, yeah?
Thank you very much for this detailed answer. And to make it a bit softer, let's go to loot boxes. So Jan, I have a question regarding regulations on microtransactions, but how does it pertain to AI and the dark patterns that we had, so the dark pattern sequel? But when you actually have like this like micro tubing of every single move that the player does to make sure that we squeeze the most money out of the players when is enough, I guess.
Wow, all right. So, yeah. What I would say is that we have a lot of regulations already regarding consumer laws, and that we have had them for 10 plus years. Loot box is just a buzzword because there have been a couple of games that were just very successful with this particular monetization mechanic, but there are more of them. It's like with the dark pattern is again a buzzword, and I mean the dark patterns are with us as long as the internet is with us. I think before AdBlock I have been winning an iPhone every single week. So we just called them dark patterns at some point, and we started to enforce them at some point. Now I don't think there is any line here. I think with the use of AI, we can make the offer to consumer more and more personalized. I think with AI black boxes, which are going to be used probably at some point by most of the companies, the developers are not necessarily going to understand what is being offered to the consumer. This is going to be work for us all to be done. But I wouldn't say we are able to find any clear line behind which this stops being okay.
Okay.
Maybe to add that, I think if we talk about loot boxes, I think in many cases, like there is some regulation. I think, for example, in US, which I think is kind of sometimes distinguishing the difference, how we define this loot box if we cannot win real money prize, something that has real value, is just part of the gaming experience, and then, for example, in the Google Play, policies, you need to define the odds, what are odds of kind of winning. But I think in 2022 there were quite a few trials that were set up against Google, against Apple, around loot boxes. And as far as I remember, they were exactly dismissed because of the case. There was not any real money involved, for example, in this, because it was kind of part of the gaming experience. On the other hand, for example, like just recently, Google allowed in the Play to add the games including the Web3 mechanics, but excluding exactly those that have loot boxes, because in this case exactly we have the case when I can win something that creates real value, yeah? Because I can really win something and then exchange on the exchange, and then it's kind of very similar to the kind of real money experience. Yes, so I think there are the differences on that level as well, which probably is, at this point is extremely hard to put it very strict line what is good and what is not. So that's why even, for example, on the Play side, those rules are kind of often quite general. some people like it, some not. But I think in general, loot box still are like quite important part of the experience. And of course, in many countries there is like discussion about potential regulations. But I think still not many countries have it. Being honest, I think Belgium had some, but very even basic ones. So that means that still okay, it's live topic, but still kind of extreme rather than something that is kind of extremely well defined. Of course, if we go deeper, then we can say okay, there are some specific difference between like skill-based games versus chance-based games. Yeah. Where okay, either I win something, it depends 100% from my skill, or it's more like chance-based, so there are specific odds, and sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. So again, the more we get to those points that are extremely on sometimes precise, but on the other hand very specialist and very kind of very detailed, then of course it's harder and harder for specific regulator to understand those small differences, and it can create something that is very universal for everyone.
May I add something?
Yes, please.
It's just two topics again. One thing, like building on what Mariusz said, depending on the definition, you can fall into requirement to have a gaming license. Even like in some countries I learned, like Austria for example, loot boxes, it doesn't have, only while you have a mechanism that is really similar to a loot box, you fall into this requirement to obtain a gaming license. So this is one. And another point of view, we were just joking with Georgi from Bulgaria and Peter from Czechia, that still ministries of finance in those countries, same here in our beautiful country, they do not understand the concept. Thanks God, so they don't come yet to monetize.
So I think that we also had a really good panel about dark patterns a few moments ago. So it's difficult not to repeat it. But I would say that a common sense approach here just kind of works the best, because we don't have a specific regulation and definitions, etc. But I would again focus on the cooperation with your community management and your support. So those examples that were discussed, if you have something and you have tens, hundreds, thousands of customers complaining, your players complaining that they are feeling scammed by something, probably there's a problem. And again, if you feel that you're doing something like extreme and really risky and you're not sure if it falls within a scope of legal requirements, maybe it's just better to skip it, because you don't want to be the one, you don't want to be the studio who takes it to the court and who gets tested by the court, because you don't want to be a case discussed during the next conference, for example.
What I would add is that we can try to approach this from a bit of a moral standpoint. We actually asked before the panel, we asked people whether there are live service games in which they felt like they're receiving value for their money. And personally, I have nothing against monetization mechanics, as long as, let's say, it's a free-to-play game, for example. What, in my view, becomes a bit more challenging is when you have a AAA game which sells their game for a full $60 price tag, and then it contains microtransactions which are pay to win. Or you have an MMO game in which you pay the full game full price tag, then you have the subscription, and then on top of that subscription you can have optional in-app purchases. Then it looks, at least for me personally, like a developer who wants to have it all, and I then personally do not necessarily feel I'm getting value for my money.
If I can just add the $60 price tag for MMOs, there's one of the reasons why they do that. Like, not our game, for example, but there's a valid reason. If you don't have sometimes a $60 price tag, you're going to have 10 billion bots who are going to flood your game possibly, and they'll destroy the economy. So sometimes gating it from the millions of bots, and actually only getting the paying customers is the only way to go. And some MMOs like Guild Wars 2 have to do it that way, with all the subscriptions on top of that. But it is an edge case. So I really quickly wanted to go to one more topic that was not discussed heavily during the previous Dark Patterns talk. And what is the ethical consideration in terms of the responsibility of the game developers and publishers, but then the parents, and maybe Mariusz, because you have a lot more experience with that. And I'd just love to hear your opinion, and not just as an expert who knows a lot more about those kinds of games than everybody in the room combined, but as a parent and someone who actually has kids who play those games on iPads, and how do you, what should we do to educate maybe some parents who don't know as much?
It's kind of, I think, hard topic, because in the way that there is I think this is one of the elements when, like, one of the examples of those cases when you have this discussion, where is the line between education and freedom? Yeah, so because squeezing one is really creating the problem with another one. Yeah, so I think on one side you have, I think, a lot of new innovation. Often, like in the platforms, like we have, let's see, Family Link and like some other really great solutions when you can really limit quite heavily what your child has access to, what can watch, and so on. On the other side, of course, there is the question: okay, do you want to go so far as China is doing, for example, when they're defining that I think the child that is less than 18 years, I think now they can play 2 hours per week, something like that. So and then of course, do you want to go that way? I think not necessarily. So I think there is some specific element when there is this still this old rule, old old idea that should be some kind of relationship and trust between parent and child that needs to be developed, that there is not just only by enforcing something, but sharing what can be as the outcome of it, because so I think finally I think more and more it's happening. Even on the play side, of course, there was a few cases when someone could buy something by accident, because but then even that kind of changed. So I think that even on the platform side, it's kind of progressing. But again, you cannot think about any edge scenario that can happen that in the way that could be really seen as very protective, but not dealing with someone's freedom at the same time. Yes, so I think this kind of this trade-off is kind of needs to be kind of taken, especially now. I think there is again so much innovation, so much software that you can. Okay, if you as the parent you believe that you want to go much more strict, you can go there. Yeah, but I think even at the platforms level, you have a lot of security created by default, and then on the platform level and on the games level as well, yeah, because there is a lot of stuff that is kind of protecting children in the games now, yeah. So whoever has any child game, for example, where majority of the audience, for example, are children, there are additional regulations coming to those companies as well, yeah. So like COPPA regulations and some other ones. So I think we are getting to the place where, of course, still it's kind of that gaming is becoming more and more safe for children. But again, there are a lot of stuff that cannot be seen as long as you don't have enough discussion and enough trust between parent and child. Yeah,
so there is a problem with children playing games and developers not being able to understand whether the person who is playing. And I think this is common for all of the developers, and we don't really have good tools to understand that yet. I mean, you can ask for the age, but I mean, it's very easy to figure out the right answer. You can have a math equation. This is one of the things recommended for CCPA, but turns out, for COPA, but it turns out that adults can have problems with these equations, and so then you can't do much with that either. I think the best solution I saw was what TikTok implemented. So when you say while registering in TikTok now, you say you're 12 or less, it's going to block you the ability to make an account for a certain amount of time based on your device ID. I mean, this is a huge sacrifice on the side of the developer, because this is going to decrease your attention. But even with that, TikTok got a penalty anyway. So we really don't have a solution for the problem yet.
Ladies?
Yeah, like I agree that we don't really have legal or technological tools right now to provide children to be safe online. I think that's a really simple thesis. So I wouldn't like to be a parenting expert because I'm definitely not a one. But I would say that we can come to a conclusion that still the parents' role here is the most influential. Because we have a set of rules, we have, of course, different legislation, and actually players' age can affect not only your privacy compliance, but also even the contract validity from the perspective of buying purchases. Because we know that, for example, in Poland, you can validly conclude contracts in a different way. When you're 10, it's different when you're, let's say, 13. It's different than when you're 18, and it can be different in each country. So it's really complex, and it really affects your, let's say, microtransactions, loot boxes, gambling regulations, privacy regulations. Right now we have DSA, which also deals with children issues more. And judging by the fines and the judgments and the proceedings, the authorities started taking those children-oriented regulations seriously. I would say that even the recent Fortnite penalty was based on dark patterns aimed at children specifically, not at adults. So it's a huge issue, and I don't think that from legal or technological point of view we have good solutions right now.
Yeah, but it's interesting topic. I can say it from perspective of the parent who has 5 children, yeah, which is not so common. And I remember it was quite interesting when I had a kind of discussion with my son who came me actually and who actually reached out to me asking as the gift for the birthday present the code to the browsers. Yeah, and like initially I was kind of a little pissed off in the way that, you know, okay, so you want to spend money on like something that does not exist, so like, you know, because I got used to this idea that, you know, you get something that exists for the birthday, but then like, no, after a minute actually it's like at the end of the day it's about value. Yeah, so if in the current situation that game is and its content is so high value for him that he can have the like, you know, something tangible, but he can just, you know, play. It's like I think. Finally, it's what I actually saw even recently. I see more and more like even the birthdays when actually most of the presents are exactly kind of digital presents when someone gets like the codes for this one or another game. But it's kind of value as the entertainment. Yes, so it's like, no, you go to the cinema and you pay and you have some entertainment for it. You play in the game in the same way. Yes, so of course it's kind of at the end of the day about finding some balance and looking at the from the perspective when it gets to the point when someone is getting dependent on that, someone is getting like almost like treating that as not even habit, but even more. Yes, okay, I became kind of, I cannot live without. Yeah, but I think it's very, very edge case.
So maybe not about age gating, but two remarks from my side. One is like a big ESG thing that gaming is not ready, I believe, because we as gaming industry, we have to look
Sorry,
at
what is ESG?
CSR. I'm joking. No, but look at the perspective like of the gaming industry being like now not only small studios but also public entities, and those directives that are going to be and are being implemented in by European Union regarding social governance and environmental, solutions, thresholds, KPIs, however we call it. What I mean is that we have to look really thoroughly if we consider as a main challenge of gaming being like a addiction, yeah? So we have to be able to address that on this kind of ESG level, the directives, because it will touch on and it will have an impact on gaming, for example, this one issue to add.
Gotcha. Sorry, I wasn't sure what the ESG stands for, that's why I asked. If you could share the definition.
Sorry.
No, I was not joking. I have no idea what that means. It sounds like something you add to Kung Fu Chicken or something.
Guys, yes, I just have two news. One bad, one good. Bad is we've run out of time, but good news is we've got a coffee break where we can continue discussion, if you don't mind. So how about some final remarks?
So maybe we can spend 5 more minutes for questions from the audience, perhaps, because when we started talking about children, I was like, Roblox, but I'm not going to do it to the panelists today.
I have one small remark for the regards to the children, which can be useful. I mean, if you have kids playing mobile games. I mean, both Google and Apple have parental control options. Use them. This is going to, in most cases, going to block microtransactions without your knowledge. So your as a parent, you're going to be asked to approve the purchase. And I think it's going to block the advertising ID being sent to third parties. So this is already a huge help with regards to your child.
Good point. So does anyone... Okay, here. We'll see what comes up.
Hey again. I'm Andrew and I'm a game developer, right? So we heard a lot during this panel about challenges in live service games. What about benefits?
Money.
Money and
That short?
there is money, but Jan knows more.
Yeah, I think benefits is especially on the mobile side, retention is the king now, yeah? Retention and marketability of the product is the king, and that's really the one is that you can on one side you can keep the user longer. Second, you can understand the user better based on his behavior. And third, you can really grow much harder, much deeper relationship. I think again we're discussing about how many challenges are, for example, related to the data now. But as I was mentioning, that I see the data as kind of currency. So I think what is kind of happening is that exactly those live services actually can really create much stronger relationship between the developer and the user, which especially makes a lot of sense in those games and those genres where quite significant part of the business can come from really small number of users that really love the game, they really love the content, they can afford to buy it. So I think it's kind of I was surprised as the anecdote. I was surprised. I was at the conference in Las Vegas, and then we went to get to this famous this Lombard place that is this in the
Casino?
No, not this this Lombard that is very often in the movies. Like there is this Lombard in Las Vegas, yeah. And I was actually surprised there was some
the Pawn Stars.
So?
The Pawn Stars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this one. And I saw there was like some even Picasso pictures there. I was surprised. Okay, it was some price. It was like I think $1,500, but it still was okay. $1,500 for Picasso. And then someone explained me there was some small numbers in the corner. It was like 7 out of 365. And what was? It's like the Picasso was selling some pictures and paintings in the series. So he was doing, for example, 300 copies of the same series. So he was not selling that for like 5 million, but he was selling that for like 2 or 3,000. Yeah? And I think the same case comes to these live ops as well. Yeah, so you can really distribute that content much more evenly and distribute your cost among much better base of the users. Yeah.
If I may really quickly add one other obvious benefit aside from my joke of money and retention and time is money. Is the actual value we add to the players, because our games, whether it's like RuneScape or my game, they have thousands of updates, and the quality of the game and what it can offer to the players is insurmountable compared to games that are just done and then released. We then have, thousands of updates, and there's a lot more stuff to do. So I think that is the biggest benefits of live ops games. So,
Okay.
One just
really?
one last. I know.
Okay.
But that one is actually heartwarming. So I'm going to say it. With these free-to-play games, especially free-to-play games, we can create virtual worlds, which are very easy to access, in which you can create communities. And I mean, it may seem trivial, but there are people with, disabilities who can't move. There are people with social phobias. And for these people, our games may be the primary source for social interaction. And by making them live service and free to play, we keep the access to them open.
All right, so Gosia, do you have any final remarks? Because I see you're holding the mic.
So maybe just one last, I wouldn't call it a benefit, but maybe an opportunity from more legal perspective. So be mindful that you, of course, as game developers have limited resources, limited manpower, but the authorities too. So you probably still have some time to get in compliance.
Yeah, the industry makes 180 billion a year, so. All right, thank you everybody for participating in this panel, and thank you to the panelists especially, and to the organizers from Mazut Morta.